Now, I never thought that it could be so hard to be touched by the light, then left in the dark. That cool compassion my heart once met with, swept away with the tide of a life left breathless on a cold day.
Hello everybody. I wanted the first video in this series to be more of an introduction to what trauma is. Now, trauma is generally any type of event that impacts you on an emotional level. And we're talking about emotional trauma. You know, of course there's physical trauma, getting stabbed or getting hit by a bus. But emotional trauma is sort of the invisible demon that keeps gnawing and clawing at your soul, at your heart. It remains in your brain. It remains in your cells. Your whole body system remembers trauma. You know, there's the classic stress response: fight, flight, freeze, hide. You know, all those responses when you're startled, when you're frightened. You know, you do them automatically. Your autonomic nervous system, that includes the big thing up here, the brain. It is impacted by accumulated emotional stress. It doesn't have to be a physical injury to alter your brain chemistry, structure, and function. Okay, one of the most important studies about the long-term impact of trauma is what's called the ACES study. It was done, I think about 20 years ago at Kaiser Permanente, I think that's how you pronounce it, in California, which was a health clinic. I think it was an HMO. And they just started giving surveys to their clients, and they had like over 17,000 of them over a number of years fill out the survey. And they gave it to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and they accumulated the data, and they came up with some results. And I'll do a slide that shows you the summary pamphlet information about the study. Now, most of the ACES study was about adverse childhood events, adverse childhood experiences. Now, many of them were abusive or neglectful in nature, those things that I deal with as a profession, as a child welfare professional. But the implications are far more broad and far-reaching for people that have had all kinds of different experiences. I've taken that information myself and applied it and said, when I look at my history, when I look at what happened to me as a child and as I was growing up and how I reacted to those things, and that's the key thing. How do you react to them? Well, some things we internalize and our body absorbs it, and then later on in life, it turns into heart disease, diabetes, all kinds of different maladies, cancers. Who knows what happens from that accumulated stress that was unresolved as a child. That's what the ACES study is all about. It was just phenomenal. They looked at it and said, wow. Based upon how many adverse childhood events a person has, we can see then, and we know that right now as an adult they have this disease. Well, they've got 4, or they've got 5, or they've got 6, or they've got 2. And the probabilities from these long-term chronic and deadly diseases and illnesses can be somewhat predicted by this survey, so that the doctors use that and saying, okay, a new patient fills out this survey and they've got 5 or 6 adverse childhood events, we better check them out pretty thoroughly, because the chances are they've got a severe chronic health problem over and above everything else. It's a major cause of people that are substance abusing. They have a lot of adverse childhood events in their life. These problems get passed on generation after generation after generation, and this study shows it out. So let me show you this summary of the ACES study, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit more on the post side.
Now, I never thought that it could be so hard to be touched by the light, then left in the dark. That cool compassion my heart once met with, swept away with the tide of a life left breathless on a cold day. Now the undertow could drag me on down, but the current of heaven's gonna bring me around to the spark of a man, to the soul of the new. Every loss from this world helps to widen my view on a cold day. Oh yeah, it's a cold day. The wind runs along on its lonely way. Oh yeah, it's a cold day. But every new day is a new chance to say goodbye. You're gonna tear me apart. Oh yeah, you're gonna tear me apart. Can't find my way 'cause I'm left in the dark. Oh yeah, you're gonna tear me apart. Oh yeah, it's a cold day. The wind runs along on its lonely way. Oh yeah, it's a cold day. But every new day is a new chance to say goodbye.
Wow, that was quite a list, wasn't it? 63% of over 17,000 people in the study had at least one childhood traumatic experience. That's a lot. And with a study that large, it can be generalized to the entire population. No problem. So over 60%, over 6 of every 10 people have experienced, according to this study, some type of significant trauma. And that's not accounting for all of the other less profound types of traumatic events that so many of us experience. I myself, I really didn't have any of those elements when I was growing up, other than if you were to broaden the interpretation that said loss of a parent, or from separation or divorce. Well, I lost a parent not from separation or divorce. I lost a parent through death. So there are similar types of things that can be generalized that so many other people have experienced. But like I say, how you respond and how you internalize that as a child is key. One of the things now that we talk about that we didn't talk about whenever I was a kid, that was bullying. Well, we dealt with bullies whenever I was a kid. It seems like the school system can't deal with bullies these days because there's no tolerance for the students to deal with the bullies. And the argument is, oh well, we don't want our kids fighting. Well, that causes trauma. The inability of someone to be able to feel like they can respond to a threat is a threat. Our society is creating more and more and more types of traumatic experiences than we can imagine. Now, there are many long-standing traumatic experiences that our society in the past has downplayed. One of the things that I have seen in the past 23 years that I've worked in Child Protective Services, and even farther, the other 10 or so years that I worked in mental health before I went into Child Protective Services, was domestic violence. We used to think that a child was only abused if they were a victim as a result of that they were physically harmed during an altercation between their parents, or between mom and boyfriend, or between dad and girlfriend. That's not true. Just being exposed to the environment of domestic violence, of not even violence, just domestic turmoil, can have a very significant negative impact on a child, their self-concept, who they think and they feel that they are. It degrades their feelings of importance. It degrades their feelings of safety. We've learned so much about how the brain functions in the last 20, 30 years. We've learned so much about some of the root causes of not only health problems, but mental health problems. 1/2 to 2/3 of the people that we know are abusing alcohol and drugs to a pretty severe degree, excuse me, can be accounted for by looking at their adverse childhood experiences. That's pretty significant, and that's a clue on how we need to address and deal with the problems of substance abuse. We got to look back and deal with the traumas that people have experienced. You know what that's called? It's called self-medicating. Now, the ACES study, if you go to the website, you just do a search on ACES study and it'll take you to a website and you get all kinds of information. There are reports and articles and things. The number of adverse childhood experiences someone has, the amount of drugs they have to take, or the amount of drugs that they do take, just goes up and up and up and up and up. Something's going on inside. I know something went on inside of me for many, many, many years. And it wasn't until I started really looking at and examining my childhood, the experiences I had as a child, the experiences I had as an infant and looked at them with a critical eye, then I was able to reinterpret all of the other events of my life. And I could look at that later on event as an adult, as a young person, and say, oh, that's why I felt that way. That's why that was so terrible for me when I was going through it. That's why I could never get over whatever it was. I carried it along. And that's the thing with traumas. Small, medium, large, it doesn't matter. They accumulate over time. The beginning one impacts the next one, and that accumulates and multiplies and impacts the next one. And one thing we know for certain is that we're going to have traumatic events in our life. We're going to have disappointments. We're going to have bad things happen to us. We're going to have people in our life die. We're going to have losses of one shape, form, or fashion throughout our life. That's life. You can't change those things that happen. You can only cope with them. You can deal with them. You can reframe them into a context that no longer causes you emotional harm. You can deflate the stress. And that's the key. Removing the stress. I contend, and I haven't looked into it extensively, but I know the evidence is there. Pretty much all of our health problems and our mental health problems are directly related to how much stress we have and how stress impacts us. And the only way to diffuse stress effectively is learning how to remove its power and, in essence, regain your power over your life events. Take control of your life back again. Don't be a puppet like Pinocchio, dancing around when someone else is pulling your strings, when other events and other situations are pulling your strings. That's what my book's going to be about. Trauma bombs. Surviving them, diffusing them, learning how to be happy. I'm working on it. And I know you want to work on it too. Because everybody needs to. So until next time, be happy. Try to have a good time. But definitely be safe. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.